Chapter 6, Part C of Greener Than You Think. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Greener Than You Think by Ward Moore. Chapter 6, Part C. August 29th. The last 3 days have been filled with terror and suspense. It began when a patrolling shepherd on the Isle of Skye found a suspicious clump of grass. All conditions favored the invader. The spot was isolated, communications were difficult, local labor was inadequate. The exhaustion of the fuel supply made it impossible to fly grass fighters in, and men had to be sent by sea with makeshift equipment. Happily, there were 2 super cyclone fans at Lochinvar which had been shipped there by mistake, and these were immediately dispatched to the threatened area. The clump was fought with fire and dynamite, with the fans preventing the broken Stolons from rooting themselves again. After a period of grave anxiety and doubt, there seems to be no question this particular peril has been averted. Not a trace of the threatening weed remains. The Queen went personally to Westminster Abbey to give thanks. August 30. Work on the Sisyphus proceeding slowly. I have decided to keep my own cabin intact and have the adjoining one fitted for a writing room. Then I can accompany F on her experimental excursions and not lose any time on my book, which is progressing famously. What a satisfaction creative endeavor is. August 31st. The bill for construction of Berlitz City was debated today. The PM stated flatly that the grass would be overcome before the city could be built. Cheers. The honorable member from South Tooting rose to inquire if the right honorable member could offer something besides his bare word for this. Groans, faint applause, cries of "shame," "no gentleman," etc. The Home Minister begged to inform the honorable member from South Tooting that Her Majesty's government had gone deeply into the question of the so-called vertical cities long before the honorable member had ever heard of them. Did the honorable member ever consider, no matter how many precautions were taken in the building of conduits for a water supply, that seeds of the grass would undoubtedly find their way in through that medium, or through the air intakes, no matter how high? Dead silence. The honorable member from Stoke Pogus asked if the opposition to his honorable friend's bill wasn't the result of pressure by a certain capitalist concerned principally with the manufacture of concentrated foods. Groans and catcalls. The Chancellor of the Exchequer inquired if the honorable member meant to impugn the integrity of the government. Cries of "shame," "no," "unthinkable," etc. If not, what did the honorable member imply? Obstinate silence. Since no answer was forthcoming, he would move for a division. Result: the bill overwhelmingly voted down. Since the Skye excitement, everyone is inclined to be jittery, and nerves are stretched tightly. When I told F she had missed a great opportunity to test her formula in Scotland, she blew up and called me a meddling parasite. This is pretty good coming from a dependent. Only my forbearance and consideration for her sex kept me from turning her out on the spot. September 1st. Encouraged by the Skye episode, a group of volunteers is being formed to attempt an attack on the grass covering the Channel Islands. More than can possibly be used are offering their services. I subscribed £10,000 toward the venture. Preparations for moving to Kilkenny almost complete. Even if F gets going by December and the Scottish repulse is permanent, I believe I shall be better off in Ireland until the first definite victory is won against the grass. September 5th. The grass moved again, and this time all attempts to repulse it failed. It is now firmly entrenched on both the Orkneys and the Hebrides. Terrible pessimism. Commons voted no confidence 422 to 117, and my old friend Deanne is back in office. September 6th. Sisyphus almost ready. Find I can get a crew to work for wages when not in port. Luncheon at Chequers. PM urges me not to leave England as it might shake confidence. I told him I would consider the matter. September 7th. F says she is ready to make new tests, and what is holding up work on the Sisyphus? Replied it was complete except for my cabins. She had the effrontery to say these weren't important, and she was ready to go ahead without me. I pointed out that the Sisyphus was my property, and it would not sail until I was properly accommodated. September 8th. I shall not move to Ireland after all. The grass has a foothold in Ulster. September 9th. The Irish are swarming into Scotland and Wales. Impossible to keep them out. September 10th. Donegal overrun. September 12th. On board the Sisyphus, wrote an incredible amount, still beyond me how anybody can call the fashioning of a book work. We left Southampton last night on a full tide, and are now cruising the Channel about 4 miles from the French coast. It is quite unbelievable. Under this tropical green blanket lies the continent of Europe, the home of civilization. And the bodies of millions, too. Except for a few gulls who shriek their way inland and return dejectedly, there is not a living thing in sight but the grass. I have reserved the afterdeck to myself, and as I sit here now, scribbling these notes, I think what impresses me more than anything else is the feeling of vitality which radiates from the herbaceous coast. The dead continent is alive, alive as never before, wholly alive, moving with millions of sensitive feelers in every direction. For the first time, I have a feeling of sympathy for Joe's constant talk of the beauty of the grass. But in spite of this, the question which comes to my mind is, can you speak glibly about the beauty of something which has strangled nearly all the world? Later. Sitting on the gently swaying deck, I was moved to add several pages to my history. But now we are approaching the narrower part of the Channel, and the sea is getting choppy. I shall have to give up my jottings for a while. Still later. F finally picked a spot she considered suitable, the remains of a small harbor, and we anchored. I must say she was over fussy. One cove is pretty much the same as another these days. Possibly she was so choosy in order to heighten her importance. Repetition of the involved etiquette of inspecting the intended victim and turning on the sprays. Only this time the suppressed excitement anticipating possible success made even the preliminaries interesting. Miss Frances and her assistants retired for a mysterious conference immediately after the application, and I stayed up late talking with the captain till he was called away by some duty. It is now nearly 2 a.m. In a few hours we shall know. September 13th. Horribly shaken this morning to find the grass unaffected. Even wondered for a moment if it were conceivable that F would never find the right compound, that nothing could hurt the grass. Had I been ill-advised in not going more seriously into Berlitz vertical cities? F, very phlegmatic about it, says another 12 hours of observation may be of value. She and A rowed ashore over the runners trailing in the water, and with great difficulty succeeded in hacking off a few runners of the sprayed grass. I thought her undertaking this hazard an absurd piece of bravado. She might just as well have sent someone else. Disregarding her rudeness in not inviting me, I accompanied her unasked to her laboratory cabin. She laid the stolons on an enamel-surfaced table and busied herself with some apparatus. I could not take my eyes from these segments of the grass. They lay on the table, not specimens of vegetation, but stunned creatures ready to spring to vigorous and vengeful life when they recovered. It was impossible not to pick one up and run it through my fingers, feeling again the soft electric touch. Miss Frances's preparations were interminable. If she follows such an elaborate ritual for the mere checking of an unsuccessful experiment, no wonder she is taking years to get anywhere. My attention wandered, and I started to leave the cabin when I noticed my hand still held one of the specimens. It was withered and dry. September 17th.